Let it be known. Good morning, February 2nd, 2021, Black History Month. When people have yelled, defund the police, this is what they really mean. In Rochester, New York, a 9-year-old Black girl screaming for her daddy, pepper sprayed, handcuffed, shoved in the back of a police car by the Rochester Police Department. We're going to talk about that and why people say defund the police. Also today, we're expecting a visit from one of the great legal minds today, Joey Jackson from Headline News and CNN. We're looking forward to that. Dr. Chavis, good morning. We're going to bring in our president and CEO. Dr. Chavis, it's always a pleasure.
Good morning, Stacey Brown, and good morning to the Black Press of America. Good morning, Black America. Good morning, the world. We're very pleased on behalf of the National Newspaper Publishers Association to be with you again on the second day of Black History Month, 2021.
Yeah, and Dr. Chavis, you have a saying about how to celebrate Black History. Why don't you tell our viewers that again?
Well, thank you. The best way to celebrate Black history is to make some more history. And certainly for 194 years, the Black Press of America, since Freedom's Journal was first published in February of 1827, we have been on the front line of reporting the news, being an advocate for freedom, justice, and equality. And we thank our chair, Karen Carter Richards, and all the publishers of this day of 2021, 230 African-American owned Black newspapers and media companies across America. And we're growing every day. So, you know, what happened to our sister in Rochester? And this is a young girl, a young Black girl, 9 years old, brutalized by the Rochester Police Department. And so racially motivated police brutality continues. And we can't be quiet. Black Lives Mattered in 2020. Black Lives Matter in 2021. And Black lives will always matter. And if you look at the history of African people in America, not just during Black History Month, but every month during the year, we find our long struggle, the suffering, the pain, the oppression, the brutalities, and the inhumanity of white supremacy, particularly under the color of law. So we're ready to get into it today, Stacey, for the news of the day.
Yeah, and I want to start by, we're going to show a video, but before we show the video, first of all, of course, it's disturbing, but I want to read a quote from our coronavirus task force, the great Dr. Ebony Hilton. When she saw this video, Dr. Chavis, she said, "I'm resigned to know I won't see equality in my lifetime. To hear a 9-year-old baby pleading for her father as police handcuff and pepper spray her in the face is evidence of that. There is no hope when the world shows you that it willingly poisons the innocence of the next generation." This 9-year-old girl, really what it was and what it is, it was a mental health issue. It was an issue in which the girl was struggling with some mental health issues. Were the police needed? Maybe, but more so, people argue when they say defund the police, they don't mean that. Most people don't mean that we don't need police. They're saying put some money into social services, some professionals that could have gone out there and helped the situation. She's screaming for her daddy. Let's look at the video.
Come on. I'm going to pay for you and I don't want to. Sit back. Then sit back. Come on. This is your last chance. Otherwise, pepper spray's going in your eyeballs. Come on, let's go.
Sorry, keep me safe for a minute.
Come on. Come on. I'm going to go get him. Now sit back. Come on. I will fix it. I will fix it.
Dear, why you just stop for a second and take a deep breath. Hey, just stop.
Please. I will get your dad.
No, you said that you were going to pepper spray me. No, please, no, stop.
Sit back.
Oh, I got a bad arm.
Just spray her.
No, I have
Just
a bad
spray her at this
arm.
point.
Stop. Stop.
Dear,
Stop.
I got her. I got her.
Please wipe my eye. Wipe
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable is right. That officer said something correct there. Unbelievable is right. You got an army of police officers there and a 9-year-old. These officers are trained to handle violent criminals. This is a 9-year-old. Before we go any further at it, I want to bring on one of the greatest legal minds there is. We've heard of Vernon Jordan. We've heard of Thurgood Marshall. We've heard of Barbara Jordan and Reginald F. Lewis and Pauline Murray and Johnny Cochran. Well, you've certainly heard of Joey Jackson, and it is always a privilege to bring on Joey Jackson. Joey, good morning.
The pleasure and privilege is mine. It's nice to be with both of you. Good morning to you. Not great to see that video, I should say that. That's happening too much in our communities. We really got to get a grapple on that. It's not a good look at all.
Attorney Jackson, it's always so good to see you. You represent the best, not only of our legal minds, our legal genius, but you also represent the best of what it means to be a freedom fighter. We appreciate you so much. I remember we were on a program together not too long ago in New York City. So it's always good to see you. And I always know that you're on the case. So thank you for joining the Black Press of America this morning.
No, it's a pleasure and a privilege. Listen, you are a titan in the community. You have done so much for so many. And I think there's so many whose lives are improved based upon your leadership and what you've done. So it's a privilege to be here. And belated happy birthday, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. You know, I'm getting wise about a year.
and Joey, he thinks he's getting younger too. He acts like he's getting younger. So keep an eye on that.
Well, I'm trying to stay active.
I don't know about the wise or younger. I could tell you he's getting more handsome. So that's, you know, that's
well, thank you.
Attorney Joey Jackson. Well, let's start there with that video. You know, you see this, and like you said, it's happening far too often. What's when you saw it? What is your reaction, and what's your message, Attorney Jackson?
So there's a number of things. First of all, Stacey, great to be with you, and grateful for the tremendous work that you do every day, keeping people informed, the journalism, your background, and of course, in pivoting to what your question is and shedding light on issues like this. And so we're seeing this happen far too often. What's the message? The message is we've got to bridge the gap between the police and their policing of our communities. We have to have policing communities who respect the communities they police, who are trained to deal with those communities, who potentially live in those communities, have a reverence for those communities, who can interact with the people in those communities, and who can have a respect for the people who are there. And so sometimes you see videos like this and there's just no excusing what's happening. What is the thought process? What is the judgment process? And so if we're going to move forward into a place of peace, if we're going to move forward into a place where we're going to have the mutuality of respect, you certainly want respect from African-American communities and communities of color, well, then certainly you need to give respect to those communities of color. And I think if we could bridge that gap and we could have people in there who know what they're doing and who have a greater sensitivity and who handle their jobs with care and sensibility, then I think we can get somewhere, because there's no place for things like that anywhere, quite frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be following that. You can follow us at www.blackpressusa.com. We'll be writing a lot more about that. But we invited Attorney Joey Jackson on to talk about Black history from a standpoint of the legal field. And Joey, of course, has covered so much for CNN and Headline News, and he's done a lot. He's litigated a lot of cases. I happen to have been in the courtroom with Joey. This wasn't the case he litigated a couple of years ago during the Bill Cosby trial. I know that he also did some work on other big trials as well. Can you talk about, Joey, what's that like when you go into a courtroom as an analyst as opposed to a lawyer, and you're covering these huge cases?
So it's frustrating, particularly in the Bill Cosby case, Stacey, that I had the pleasure and privilege of, covering with you and being there with you and getting to speak to you and know you and appreciating you. And so it's frustrating because you sit there and there's certainly things that you think should be added to the equation. You want to get up, you want to object, you want to, certainly add your spin to things, but this is not your case. So sit back. One of the things that was appalling about that, just to pivot to Cosby for a minute, and there's been a number of cases, of course, we've covered, it was very frustrating to me in doing my research on the Bill Cosby case. When it came for sentencing, the attorneys made an application for bail pending appeal at his sentencing. And generally what happens is when you have arguments to make to a court, if those arguments, because of trial deficiencies, rise to a level where they really impair your client's rights, you can make an application to leave your client out in some jurisdictions, right? Or even after conviction, at the time of sentencing, you have these trial deficiencies. You make an application for bail pending appeal. The client remains out while the next judicial branch makes a decision. That is the appellate division. When I sat in that courtroom, and the application was made by his attorneys and they didn't follow proper protocol, right? They were supposed to file papers and put the court on notice. They didn't do that until the day of the sentencing. And I'm sitting there, Stacey, and I'm saying, if I as an analyst know that they should have filed the appropriate paperwork to make this application, why doesn't his attorney who's standing up for him know that you have to file the requisite paperwork? And of course, as you remember, the court questioned the attorney and said, counsel, I think you should have done X, Y, and Z. The lawyer said, no, judge, I'm in my rights. And the judge said, no, I don't think you are. He then went back, that is the judge, said, I'll take a look at the law and I'll come back. And then, of course, he came back and he took Bill Cosby and he put him away. Now, we can all have strong opinions upon Bill Cosby's guilt or innocence. I get that. I don't want to relitigate that. What I'm saying to you, Stacey, is as a lawyer, you have to know those protocols. You have to know what they provide for. You have to know what your client's rights are. You have to know what documents and requisite briefs and memos of law you need to file to preserve your client's rights. And so to the extent that I'm sitting there as an analyst and I'm knowing because of my TV research what you need to do, and the lawyer who represents him didn't know what to do, that really, it stuck me at the core, and it was really not a good look at all. And quite frankly, it just really hit home.
Yeah, and surprisingly, the lawyer, Tom Mesereau, was the lawyer who really, you talk about not making mistakes in that, he made no mistakes in the Michael Jackson trial.
Yeah. So just real quick, Mesereau, I could tell you this, Stacey, he was, I thought, a very compelling and a very skilled attorney. The rest of the team I had issue with, and when it came time for his sentencing, I think what occurred by then is Bill Cosby has gotten rid of Mesereau and hired some other guy. And look, hire who you want, have opinions about Cosby's guilt, say, what are you talking about? He's guilty of sin. That all might be true. But the reality is do your job as a lawyer. Get in that courtroom. If I have to file a memo 7 days before to argue my case, file it 7 days before, file it 10 days before. If I have to file a requisite procedure so that I can protect my client's rights, do it. And if you're the lawyer standing for him and it wasn't Mesereau, it was some other person that he hired to do his appeal, why don't you know that if I'm sitting there as a TV analyst knowing it? And so just to button up the answer to your question, Stacey, it could be very frustrating sometimes when you're there and you're seeing things happening. And I don't have a monopoly on wisdom. You know, I have my screw-ups in court like every other attorney in the country. But at a minimum, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to know the rules. And I'm going to make the best argument I can on behalf of my client. And when that's not done, it hurts me very much.
Yeah, Attorney Joey Jackson, when I brought you on, I mentioned some names, Thurgood Marshall, Vernon Jordan, Johnny Cochran. Who or what inspired you?
You know, I have to tell you, these are titans in the community, and certainly they're inspirational. And, you know, they do tremendous work every day, or certainly did, you know, at the time to really create a legacy for other lawyers, to create a path for other lawyers, to provide an opportunity for other lawyers, and they are certainly inspirational. And I'm not only inspired by the great lawyers that I've seen out there, but I'm just inspired by the nature of our community, what the needs of our community are. I'm inspired by other people who are working so hard. I'm inspired by the Ben Chavez's of the world, who was out there as a young man, really pounding on doors, marching and doing things to really bring attention to the cause and really the advancement of people of color. I'm inspired by the work that you do, Stacey, in terms of the media work, shining light on it, really having forums like this for people. So it's not only the lawyers who have done great things, and I give them props, particularly Johnny Cochran, major fan of his, Thurgood Marshall, major fan, Vernon. I mean, all of them tremendous, but I'm inspired by so many other people in our communities who do great things. And we have a need certainly for legal services. And, you know, it was my honor and privilege to try to become a part of that and to do something. And, you know, here I am.
Yeah, and let it be known, good morning to Lynn Spivey, Nicole McDaniel, Emmanuel Mesh. Our executive administrator, Claudette Perry, says, welcome, Joey Jackson, Attorney Jackson, and Bobby Henry, our publisher down in Florida, says good morning. David Youngblood also says good morning. David Youngblood, we always appreciate David Youngblood, a loyal viewer of the Black Press. Good morning, a proud graduate of Thurgood Marshall School of Law. That's David Youngblood. Dr. Chavez, I know that you focus a lot, of course, as you should and as you always have, on Black empowerment and justice and equality. Tell us a little bit about the Wilmington 10, and I want Joey Jackson to weigh in on the Wilmington 10 as well.
Okay, I will. This week marks the 50th anniversary of the week that 50 years ago that white supremacists attacked the Black community in Wilmington, North Carolina. I was there working on a civil rights case. Young Michael Jordan, the famous basketball player, was in junior high school, and the issue was school desegregation. And because we stood up to fight for the rights of Black children, like Michael Jordan at the time in Wilmington, North Carolina, rather than prosecute the white supremacists who attacked us in a Black church, they put us, falsely accused us, put us in jail, make a long story short, sentenced us to 282 years in prison in 1972. The incident happened in February of 1971. That's why this is the 50th anniversary. And of course, during most of the 70s, Attorney George Jackson, I was incarcerated unjustly in North Carolina. But we pursued, because of prosecutorial misconduct, the Fourth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals finally overturned our case. But then it took another 30 years for the state of North Carolina to decide finally that they were going to file a pardon of innocence, not a pardon of guilt, a pardon of innocence. And the governor made the famous statement, Beverly Perdue, that this was a case of abject racism, racial discrimination. We should have never been arrested, never been prosecuted. But so I want to just go back to the issue of police brutality and prosecutorial misconduct. We have a new president, new vice president. We have a new Congress. And before the Congress, Attorney George Jackson, is the George Floyd Police and Justice Act. And as you know, going back to what we saw at the beginning of the program, what happened in Rochester, now what are the prosecutors going to do about it? Because when you reform the criminal justice system, it is the police department, but it's not just the police. It's also prosecutors. It's also judiciary, judges, the correctional system. The criminal justice system in America is very complex, and African Americans are disproportionately negatively impacted. Not only 50 years ago when I was unjustly treated, but even today in 2012, there's an urgent need for the overall reform of the criminal justice system. But I wanted to find out from Attorney Jackson, how do you feel about the George Floyd Police and Justice Act that's now before the Congress of the United States?
So a couple of things. The first thing I'll say is, you go back to the Wilmington 10, and so you have to give credit to where it's due. And prosecutorial misconduct is it's an issue. And when you see and you live it, as you have, as Benjamin Chavez has, it's just incredible to have gone through that and to have been sentenced to, 29, 30 years and to do it.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, you talk about the trailblazers that come before you. You talk about people having the courage and the ability to take a stand. You talk about people putting their money where their mouth is. You talk about people who are fighting for injustices and really living through it. I know you're a humble guy, and you've done tremendous things, and I just have to give you props for that. I don't know how many people could have endured and taking on the leadership mantle that you took as a young man, as an older man, as anyone. So again, before pivoting to George Floyd, wow, thank you very much for all you've done and all you do.
Thank you. Thank you. As we say in the movement, lucha continua, the struggle continues.
It certainly does. And so, and then to just pivot from that and to look at George Floyd and to look at a bill potentially that now can be passed. And we have to look ultimately not only at the bill as it stands now, but what should be in there and what could be in there to advance the cause of justice moving forward. Yes, I do believe, as the bill provides, that we should have a national registry which looks at police misconduct, which analyzes police misconduct. Yes, I do think we have to look at the issues of chokeholds and the issue of how, those holds affect people in our communities. Yes, I do believe that we have to look at policing in general. We have to look at transparency relative to that policing. We have to look at training relative to that policing. We have to look at all measures of reform in our system. And so ultimately, how bills get passed is you have legislation that's on the floor, and I'd be, mindful of what amendments, if any, are made to a bill like that. I'd be mindful of what the final version looks like. But I guess my answer would be, in the time we have here, is that anything that could really advance the cause of justice, anything that could advance the cause of shining light upon police and policing and how neighborhoods and communities are policed, anything that could advance the light of what police are doing and how they're treating our communities and whether they're treating communities with respect and fairness and decency, anything that could really prevent in the final analysis, because that's where we are, really someone being killed for no reason at all, in our community. I think that's a major step forward. And so I would hope that with the new administration, there's a new day in town, there's a new sheriff in town, and that we could do something moving forward as we look there at President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, that we can do something to advance the cause of justice everywhere in this country, and particularly in our community.
Yeah, and Attorney Jackson, we talk about police reform, and we saw that video earlier. We discussed that, but there's a even deeper problem, isn't it? Within the courtroom itself, within the prosecutor's office, and then even as Celeste Hart, one of our viewers, brings out, and you point this out with the attorneys in the Bill Cosby case, lawyers who don't file motions properly and timely. What can be done to kind of ensure that people get a fair trial?
Yeah, so justice is supposed to be about that, justice. And I've been on both sides of the aisle. I was a prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and then certainly now in doing the work that I have to do as a defense attorney. And so I would just say to prosecutors, and then I'll pivot to defense attorneys, the cause of justice is a very important one, and it's one that I think we all need to play fairly in. And that's why you're seeing reform around the issue of what's called discovery. What does that mean? It means give the people who are standing accused all the information that they need in a timely fashion to defend and represent their client. It means providing and disclosing and making available, and not, in any way hiding or hindering someone's ability to represent themselves. It means at the end of the day, putting all the evidence out on the table and allowing a jury to make conclusions with respect to the evidence presented. Prosecution doesn't mean simply convicting people. And I think we have to get away from that notion. And as I used to believe that prosecution was just all about doing justice, until I learned it's not. It's about convicting. And so we have to come to a place where prosecutors, and I'm not casting aspersions on all prosecutors, like I'm not casting aspersions on all police, but I'm saying that we have to be about fairness. And certainly judges, as they preside over trials, have to be about that also, right? Because they have an instrumental role as it relates to making sure the jury sees evidence they should see and doesn't see evidence they don't. And then in terms of, defense attorneys, our job is about preparation. And I find the more you look at a file, the more you, unearth the truth about what's happening. And so the more lawyers can be prepared, the more we're given information that we need to represent and do the job that we can do, the more that we're, staying up and conversant with the rules of court, that we present our motions, that we do the job that we can do on behalf of our client. And the more people that we elect, certainly to the bench, that are sensitive about these issues, and that are appointed to the bench that are sensitive about these issues, I think the more fairness that we can have in our system.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dr. Chavis, I'll yield to you. We only have a couple of minutes left with the great Joey Jackson.
Well, again, I want to just to salute Attorney Joey Jackson for his diligence, for his fierce work in representing the clients. You were talking about having proper legal representation. If everybody had a lawyer like Joey Jackson, the Black community would be much better off. A lot of times, our defendants in courts don't have proper legal representation. Either they can't afford it, or they get a court-appointed lawyer that's representing the court, not the defendant. So it's institutionalized racism, it's systemic racism, and I know that everybody still has that video in the mind from Rochester, New York. And Stacey, it is a case of mental illness, but the mental illness is not the little girl, 9-year-old girl. The mental illness are the cops that would mace a little 9-year-old girl. And keep in mind, she's inside of a police car. You know, she's not in a random place. She's already inside a police car. And for them to treat her that way, I believe exposes the mental illness of those police officers in Rochester, New York. In fact, I would say on the record that white supremacy itself is a mental illness.
Yeah, and to your point, Dr. Chavis, on that video, the police, one of the officers says, "You're acting like a child," and she says, "I am a child."
That's what I'm saying. So who's right? I mean, the irrationality is on the part of the police officers. The racism is on part of the police officers. And I think what Attorney Joey Jackson said earlier was these cops are not properly trained. I really believe that police officers should live in the community that they're policing. They don't know our community. You know, they don't care about our community. At least there are some great police officers. All police officers are not bad. All police officers are not racist. But we have a lot of work to do to clean up our law enforcement.
Yeah, and Attorney Jackson, before we let you go, tell us a little bit about your firm, the name of your firm, and where you're located, and a little bit about what you guys are doing.
So, you know, look, we're just out here working hard every day. My name of my firm is Joey Jackson Law, and that's those are my teammates, my office. You know, I try to get a group of very talented people, a diverse group, reflective, I think, of communities that, you know, we serve and do business with. We do a lot of work in the law enforcement space as it relates to corrections officers, you know, working with corrections officers, representing correction officers. We represent private clients, and we just do the best job we can in terms of, you know, being out there available and just trying to give people the best measure of hope and representation that we possibly can do. We're located right at 5 Penn Plaza in, you know, Midtown Manhattan. And I'm just thankful to, you know, be a part of a group of such special people and talented people who are working hard every day, you know, to achieve justice in so many instances and to work hard on behalf of our clients to get positive results for them. And so, you know, I consider myself blessed and fortunate to do that, just as I do to have the opportunity to join both of you as we start this Black History Month. And so I would just say, I'm just, you know, thankful for the opportunity to join you this morning, Stacey Brown. I'm thankful to you, Dr. Benjamin Chavez, for all you do and continue to do. And I appreciate you giving me a few minutes to spend with you today. So thank you for that.
Well, we thank you. And Black History Month, we remember Vernon Freeman Welcome, who counted among the foremost political, civil rights, and community activists of her time. After moving to Baltimore at the age of 23, Vernon Freeman Welcome graduated from Coppin State Teachers College and Morgan State College, and later received a master's degree in history at New York University. She earned honorary degrees from Howard University and the University of Maryland. She was a proud member of the Delta Sigma Theta sorority. She taught for nearly a dozen years in the Baltimore public school systems before setting her sights on the political arena, where she ultimately made history. She married Dr. Henry C. Welcome, and later she won election to the Maryland House of Delegates, becoming the first Black woman to hold that, to serve in that House of Delegates, and then later became the first Black woman to win election to the State House in Maryland. She passed away in 1991, but she served as a delegate until 1962 when she was elected senator. So Vernon Freeman, welcome. We remember you on Black History Month. Let it be known, in recognizing the humanity of our fellow beings, we pay ourselves the highest tribute. Thanks, Joey Jackson. Thanks, Dr. Chavis. And thank you all for watching. We will be back at it again tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Please social distance, wear your mask, wash your hands for 20 seconds, and be respectful of others during this pandemic. Everybody have a great day.